Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome. We look forward to beautiful Sabbath prayers together. Let's begin with one of our traditional melodies for Erev Shabbat, Yedid Nefesh, My Heart's Delight. You'll find the words in the middle of page 128. Let's turn to the beautiful words of Lechilach, page 645. Top of page 645. This composition is based on the famous phrase from Genesis 12, when God tells Abram to go forth from his land to a new land, to the land promised to the future Israelite people. Lechilach. So we turn now to the blessing over the Shabbat candles. Don't forget to light your candles at home. Sabbath begins approximately 7:30, 7:40 this Shabbat. So according to tradition, we should light the candles 18 minutes before the official beginning of Shabbat. We're on page 121 in the prayer book, and we'll read together in the middle of the page, and then we'll sing the blessing together. O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Let's continue with the meditation for the Sabbath evening. We're on page 127. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we care nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember justice is our duty and a better world our goal. So we embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace. Let's turn to the Psalms, as we always begin on Kabbalat Shabbat with Psalm 95. We're singing together, and the words are on page 130. Reading together on the bottom of the page. Come, let us sing joyously to Adonai. Raise a shout for our rock and deliverer. Let us come into God's presence with praise. Let us raise a shout for God in song. For Adonai is a great God, the great ruler of all divine beings. In God's hand are the depths of the earth. The peaks of the mountains are God's. God's is the sea, God made it, and the land which God's hands fashioned. Come, let us bow down and kneel, bend the knee before Adonai, our Maker. For Adonai is our God, and we are the people God tends, the flock in God's care. Oh, if you would but heed God's charge this day. Let's read a portion of Psalm 29. The words are on 136, in the middle of page 136. This is Psalm 29, a Psalm of David. Ascribe to Adonai, O divine beings, ascribe to Adonai glory and strength. Ascribe to Adonai the glory of God's name. Bow down to Adonai, majestic in holiness. The voice of Adonai is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. Adonai over the mighty waters. The voice of Adonai is power. The voice of Adonai is majesty. The voice of Adonai breaks the cedars. Adonai shatters the cedars of Lebanon. God makes Lebanon skip like a calf, Syrian like a wild ox. So we turn to the beautiful words of Lecha Dodi, composed by the famous Kabbalist of the 1500s, Shlomo Alkabetz, who was a co-leader and disciple of Isaac Luria. Luria and Chaim Vital and Alkabetz helped develop, and Moshe Cordovero helped develop what's known as the Lurianic Kabbalah. So we're singing the first verse, second verse, and then if you're able, stand up and we sing the ninth verse together. Let's continue singing. I think everyone knows by heart the beautiful words of Shalom Aleichem, peace be unto all of us. And in this case, in the words of this medieval melody, Shalom Aleichem is referring to the ministering angels, God's messengers on high who have come to not only help us welcome the Sabbath, but bring the Almighty closer to the imminent realm of human beings. Page 142, Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharei, Malachei Yom, Mi-melech Malachei Amlachi, HaKadosh Baruch Amen. Kaddish, page 144. Yikada v'yikada shemei Rabba v'yamad yivrachute v'yamliv b'chute v'chayechon u'yomechon u'chaye b'chol Beit Yisrael v'gala v'gala u'izman kari imru Barak v'yishtabah, v'yipar v'yitramam v'yinaseh, v'yitada v'yitaleh, v'yitaleh, shemei v'risha brichu, Lela mikol b'chata v'shirata, tushbichata v'chemata, Tamiran Yama Bimru. Amen. We turn the page and offer praise to the Almighty with the words of the Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai Avorach. Baruch Adonai Avorach Le'olam Va'ed. Let's read together the first blessing, Mariv Aravim. We're on page 148. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzevaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on the evening. Baruch atah Adonai, Amariv Aravim. The second blessing for the gift of God's commandments, Torah, mitzvot, and all of the teachings that we shall study and follow in our lives. Page 150. Everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai, our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amos Yisrael. Together the words of the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod, Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Let's be seated. And we'll continue with the familiar words of Deuteronomy. We're on top of page 154, 154, with the words of the Ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'adecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha v'lechtecha v'derech v'shachtecha v'kumecha v'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot be'einecha v'ktabtam al mezuzot betecha v'visharecha leman tizkaru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'elohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem, Asher Hotzeiti Etchem, Me'eretz Mitzrayim, Liyod Lachem Le'Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home, and when you are away, when you lie down, and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand, and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. Adonai Elohechem Emet. So let's turn now to the beautiful words of Mi Chamocha, also from the book of Exodus, chapter 15. We're on 158. Let's read together the words of the Hashki Venu, this beautiful blessing that we recite on the evening service to ask God to watch over us, protect us, keep us strong in the midst of all the tribulations and the plague that we are experiencing at this time. Middle of page 160. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace. Raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people, Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haporeh sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Let's turn the page, and we're singing together Mi Chamocha. We're on 160. Excuse me. Vishamru. We just sang Mi Chamocha. Vishamru, the words are on 162, and these are words again from the book of Exodus. Vishamru, Israel, Shabbat So we come now to the essence of the Friday evening service, the 7 blessings of the Tefillah, beginning with words from the psalmist, and we're on page 164 as we sing together. Adonai sefatati tachuvi agit ilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei avodim v'imoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Hagadol HaGibor HaNorah, Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'Koreh HaKol, V'Zocher HaSelvot V'Mahot, U'Mevii Gula L'Bnei Bneihem, L'man Shemo Yahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham v'Zatzara. Atah givor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol atam Rab le'Hoshia. Mechakel chaim v'chesed, Mechayei hakol be'rachamim rabim. So make noflim v'rafeh cholim, u'matir asurim, u'mekayeh emunato, l'shenei afar, michamocha v'al gevurot, u'midam elah, melech b'mid, u'mekayeh, u'matzmi ad Yeshua, v'ne'eman atah v'chayot hakol, baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh hakol. Let's read together. We're on 171, top of the page. The days pass and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed. We, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we do not know it. Blessed is the Eternal One, the Holy God. Baruch atah Adonai, El HaKadosh. everyone may be seated. Lean back comfortably in your chair at home. Let's read this meditation for the Ritzay. We're on page 175. This is a paraphrase from Psalm 8. In the middle of page 175. You were with us in our prayer, our love and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another. Let all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, shotcha levadecha yira na'avod. The prayer of thanksgiving, which is known as the modim, from the verb lehodot, to give thanks or to show gratitude. Let's read together, top of page 177. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, atov shimcha, u'lecha na'eh lehodot. So we've come to the seventh blessing, as you all know, is Shalom Rav. May great peace come upon us on the Sabbath day. We're on page 178. Let's take a few moments now for our own personal prayers and meditations. acceptable to you. Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Lord, my rock and redeemer. So this Sabbath is one of those special Sabbaths during the year because of the lunar calendar where we read 2 Torah portions in one Shabbat. We're going to conclude the book of Numbers this Shabbat. First we read the portion called Matot referring to the tribes, and then we read the concluding chapters of the Midbar when we read the portion known as Maseh. Maseh means the traveling, or the journeys of the Israelites through the Sinai for those last 39 and a half years. This is an incredible number of wonderful thoughts and ideas embedded in these chapters. I just want to mention one specific idea that's, in a sense, revolutionary. And we'll talk about it more on Shabbat morning when we study Torah together. In chapter 35, we have a discussion or commandments concerning what are called the cities of refuge, the Arei Miklat. In other words, on either side of the Jordan, there were 6 cities of refuge designated, or 6 municipalities designated as places of safety and refuge for someone who is accused of a serious crime, capital crime. The reason for these cities of refuge is that, as you know, people sometimes have accidents and unintentionally will cause great harm to another human being. My proverbial example is if you were living 3,000 years ago, plowing your oxen, pulling your oxen through the field, plowing your fields to get ready for a planting, and someone happened to be taking a nap or a sun bath in the middle of your field and you run them over with your animal and plow, that would be considered unintentional homicide, right? It's an accident. And thus, you cannot be brought to trial for second-degree murder. What did they do in the ancient world? They sent such a person who had committed this accidental crime to a city of refuge to be protected, so that the other family of the person who has been harmed or deceased would not go after his family as a point of vengeance or retribution. The underlying meaning of this is that actions carry with them intention. Accidental manslaughter is not murder. There's a big difference in the Bible between killing and murder. And that whole idea is for a subject another day when we have an hour, 2 or 3 to discuss the specifics of murder as opposed to the specifics of killing. But obviously we know murder has attached to it the notion of premeditation at times, intentionality, whereas killing sometimes, as I pointed out, is accidental. And that's why it's so important to study these cities of refuge, because it's a way of saying we can protect our community and avoid wanton lawlessness, vigilante justice, craziness among families and tribes just because someone was hurt. There has to be a better way of adjudicating justice when a mistake has been made in civil society. So that's the whole Torah portion. That's 1/60th of one idea. Let me talk about something else for a few minutes. I want to talk about what are our priorities these days. What are we really focused on? Are we only concerned about getting to Trader Joe's safe and sound and getting home with all the food we need? Or are there more important priorities for us as Jewish people in this world. People always say that I do things, we do things religiously. You've heard people say, on Monday, I'm very religious, I play mahjong. On Tuesday, I'm equally religious because it's probably my bridge day.
My men's group.
Men's group, that's right. Wendy is a great exponent of men's group. What do we do on Wednesday? Well, we religiously go to yoga class, right? Or some kind of, or maybe play tennis. I've been known to be guilty of such an activity. What do we do on Thursday? Have our hair done. Go to the nail salon. Or if you're Jewish and you're at Beit Tikva, we record our Shabbat service. So we were very religious about doing these secular, mundane things. And I want to ask you, really, what does it mean to be religious? By the way, the word religion, in Latin, it comes from, I think, religio. The root is religio, means to be connected, to be tied together, to have a deep inner, so to speak, connection. We have lots of connections to important activities, whether they be social, musical, aesthetic, sports activities, and so forth. It's hard to convince folks to be religious, to be connected to their spiritual lives. We began a new class just a day or so ago talking about the importance, the influence of the Kabbalah, the spiritual teachings of the Middle Ages from the Spanish great rabbis, which I hope will be, in a sense, a way of religiously connecting people. We, in fact, had a dozen folks here in this sanctuary for that opening class, which I believe is a major accomplishment considering the environment and the worries that we all encounter these days. But I want to say that we have to be a little bit more religious about being religious. Yes, it's true that we have to be on the computer most of the time in order to celebrate and study and learn together, but we also have to be serious about what is of major concern. There's the apocryphal phrase that the father was reprimanding his teenage daughter and said, she's a really good student. She's constantly majoring in the minors. Probably most teenagers do something like that in the course of their so-called high school studies. The reason I bring this all up is there is an analogy, or there's a real connection to the same story in the Torah portion about the tribes. Remember, the Jewish people are now on this side of the Jordan, on the eastern side of the Jordan. They're in the land of the Moabites, and they're still a year or so away from entering into the promised land. Moses has already designated how much land each tribe will get. And then along comes two tribes, the tribes of the Gadites and the Reubenites. And they say to Moses, we don't want to settle on the western side of the Jordan. We want to stay on the eastern side. We really like the eastern side of the Jordan. By the way, probably in those days it was a very fertile area. So Moses doesn't particularly object to their request, but he challenges them because he knows everyone who goes to the other side of the Jordan into the promised land is going to have to fight, going to have to go into some kind of warfare. And he says, shall your brothers go to war and you'll just sit there, meaning you'll be nice and comfy on the eastern side of the Jordan? The tribes of Gad and Reuben are impressed by what Moses is arguing. So they agree, okay, let us live there, but we will fight with everyone else. And then they say, quote unquote, first we will build sheepfolds for our cattle and cities for our children. And when Moses hears those words, he is really incensed, and he starts rebuking them. And he says, you're putting secondary things first and first things last. What does that mean? First, you should build cities for your children, meaning you should build shelter, proper habitation for your cities, your wives, your families, and then worry about your sheep and your cattle and your goats and whatever. But the Gadites and the Reubenites said, let's build, enclosures for all of our animals, for our livestock. So Moses is saying exactly what I'm just pointing out, that sometimes we make a priority of secondary things. We put the secondary things first, and we get a little bit mixed up. You and I understand what it means to have a must list. I don't know anyone in the congregation who doesn't write lists. I know some people who write lists to keep track of their lists, because we have so many things we need to do. We can't quite organize it all on our little computer screen. But be that as it may, what are the priorities? Is our priority strengthening our Jewish home? Is our priority learning more about our Jewish heritage? Is our priority doing acts of loving kindness, even in this difficult time when we can't really go out and volunteer in various organizations? But can we give tzedakah? Can we sustain other groups, other peoples who are in need? What are our real priorities as Jews? It's not just to sit home and look at the computer screen for 10 hours a day. That's not what being religious is all about. It seems to me we've come a long way since the days of Moses. We don't have to worry about whether we're going to live on the eastern side of the Jordan or the western side. That's for the Israelis to figure out. But what we do know is with all of our technological advances, with all of the gadgets and all of the incredible equipment we have to make our lives easier, we have to remind ourselves what is essential, what are our priorities as Jewish women and men. We can travel at the speed of light, but we have to remember that the speed of the day is to be kind, to be humble, to reach up to the Almighty, and to show one another respect, love, and concern. Shabbat Shalom. So we always want to say a blessing for all of our friends and loved ones who are recovering or in need of strength and healing. And you can think of all your family and friends as well at home who need a little extra blessing on the Shabbat. By the way, if we were able to read the Torah for Sabbath morning, as we come to the last chapter, of Numbers, we would lift up the Torah and say, Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. Be strong, and be strengthened by it. The Torah is our priority, as I just mentioned. The Torah gives us that strength, that spiritual, emotional, psychological strength to go forward. So, any names that you want to, any family or friends? First of all, Lynn Kelly, our dear member and board member. Also Flo Vinnick and Doreen Herdig, Joan Scheinberg.
The people who have lost their homes in the fires in Portugal.
All the Jolene's family are also living in Portugal, and many have lost their homes there due to terrible fires. So the words for Misha Berach are on page 371, and with beautiful music from Wendy and Jolene, we'll sing together.
Of strength, who bless the
sanctuary. Monday night at 6:30. And on Wednesday, we'll gather together at 6 o'clock for the second lecture given by Dr. Peter Chilik on the Kabbalah. That's this Wednesday evening. So we look forward to your being with us, and everyone is welcome to join us for a Kabbalah class.
Torah study.
Yeah, and if you want to study Torah and look at the last chapters of Numbers, Saturday morning, just hit the button, put your cursor on
The link.
the link, look at the link, and you'll find Zoom, and you'll go zoom, 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 and you'll come to Torah study, okay?
Golly.
It's another version of Zoom Gali Gali. Okay, let's turn to the closing prayers on page 586. We all rise for the Aleinu. We're singing together, middle of the page, 586. Aleinu leshabea ladon avol, latetu yotzer breshit, shelo asanu k'gaye haratzon, velo samanu k'mishachot adama, shelo zasmatenu kahem, v'kor aleinu k'chol amonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim, u'modim, lifnei melech, malchei amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, hayom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. Let's turn to a meditation before we come to the words of the Kaddish. We're reading together, top of 594, page 594. Why should I wish to see God better than this day? I see something of God in each hour of the 24, and each moment then, in the faces of men and women, I see God. And in my own face in the glass, I find letters from God dropped in the street, and everyone is signed by God's name. And I leave them where they are, for I know that wheresoever I go, others will punctually come forever and ever. On this Shabbat, we remember our loved ones and those whose yahrzeits are memorialized from this Sabbath till next Friday morning. We now recall. We remember our dear congregant Howard Arno, great supporter of this congregation. Father of Peter Arno and Andy, and dear friend of Phil Sagazio. We remember James David Cowan, son of Laura Cowan. We remember Jacob Kaplan, son of Amy Kaplan. And also Louis Rubenstein, the uncle of Barb Lamont. And we remember as well Louis DeVoe, father of Sue Katz. Let's turn to the Kaddish. The words are found on page 598. Page 598, we'll all read together. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, v'yamad yivrach chirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayeh d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agala b'zman kariv imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam me'al ma'amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitallah shemei d'kudsha b'richu. Lela min kol birchata v'shirata Tushvachata v'nechemata, Damiran b'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehi shlama rabba mitshamaya, v'chayim aleinu v'yakol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, uyaseh shalom, aleinu v'yakol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen. May the source of peace on high bring us peace to this nation, to the people of Israel, to the land of Israel. We say together, Amen. So let's recite the Kiddush, the prayer for the sanctification of the Sabbath day. And if you're looking in your prayer book, you'll find the words on 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagamim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratza banu b'shabbat kadsho Yavo ratzon inchilanu zikaron lemase v'reshit Hiu yom techila lemikra kodesh zechel yitziat Mitzrayim Kivanu lokata yatanu kidashta Mikol Hamim V'Shabbat Kodshecha Yavau Ratzon Im Chaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh Hashavat L'chaim, L'chaim Tovim. Shabbat Shalom. May it be a beautiful Sabbath day for everyone. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.